Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel, or greetings if you're here for the first time. My name's Nikki and today I'm doing a bit of a vlog in which I'm going to recommend Korean dramas based on the genre of books you enjoy reading. Now, most K-dramas are actually cross-genre. Quite a few of them will cover multiple areas. It might be a sort of comedy, but also a thriller. It might be historical drama, but also a rom-com. So I've picked sort of one category in each case, but quite a few of them will also include elements from other categories as well, which I'll sort of try and reference as we go along. So without further ado, let's kick off with the first category. So we're starting with fantasy, and here are the five K-dramas I'm recommending. First up, Alchemy of Souls. Now, this is a pretty sort of standard high fantasy. We've got people swapping bodies, we've got special abilities and various things going on, all with a sort of quasi-historical setting as well. Next up is Doom at Your Service. Now, this one could almost be classed as paranormal. There's also some romance elements, but I'm sticking it in fantasy. And we have a guy who shows up at the young woman's door, and it turns out he can grant her wish as long as it's related to doom. Um, and he's tired of granting silly, petty wishes. He's waiting for someone to wish for something really big, like destroying the world. Next up is A Korean Odyssey, and this is a very, very loose adaptation of the Chinese classic Journey to the West. There's a lot of comedy in here amidst the fantasy elements as well. And Hotel Del Luna, and this is a series set in a supernatural hotel. And finally, The Uncanny Counter, which is a typical acquired powers fighting evil kind of storyline. So moving on to thrillers. I really love Korean thrillers, in particular serial killer thrillers. Serial killers in Korean dramas are very often incredibly handsome young men. So that's one reason to watch, if nothing else. I'm going to start off with Devil Judge. This one's a little bit different than some of the other picks in this category. It's a sort of fictional future world and revolves around a show in which people are judged live on television. And I won't say too much more than that because for some of these, I don't want to spoiler the plot too much. Flower of Evil, this is a more typical serial killer type tale, but I think it's one of the best ones that I've seen so far from Korea. I really loved the characters, and the storyline, and the pacing was perfect. The next one is I Remember You, which is also known as Hello Monster. You'll see both titles around. And this again is a serial killer story, but with a bit of a family drama going on at the same time. Pick number four for thrillers is A Killer Paradox. This one's got a bit of a comedy element to it as well, in that we have our main character who accidentally kills someone, but it turns out the person he killed is a serial killer, and was a sort of bad person to begin with. And then it's the story of him he keeps coming across these bad characters, all the while being chased by a policeman who's trying to track him down. And next up, Beyond Evil, and this is a sort of pair of investigators who don't mind what lengths they go to in order to catch the bad guys. So this one's also, a bit of that sort of serial killer, murderer type storyline and hunting them down again. Moving on to comedy, and these comedy ones are actually a mix of comedy slash something else in pretty much every case. So first of all, we've got Brainworks, and this one involves a teaming up between a detective and a very competent but arrogant neurosurgeon, and they have to work together to solve cases. The best bit about this show was the great interactions, let's say, between the two main characters. I really loved the dynamic of their relationship as it progressed through the series. And next we have Ghost Doctor. This one is another arrogant surgeon. They're always arrogant surgeons in Korean dramas, who accidentally is in an accident. He gets sent out of his body, so he's kind of a ghost. And he ends up teaming up and helping a sort of slightly less competent new surgeon and giving him his career a bit of a boost by taking over his body and helping with surgeries and things. And again, it's that great interaction between the characters that really make this series. Number three is Zombie Detective. As the title suggests, we have a guy who wakes up and discovers he's a zombie. So there's a huge amount of comedy involved around that as he's trying to hide this from the rest of the world. And meanwhile, he's trying to investigate how he died, what happened to him. Next up is a drama that is one of my absolute favorites. I've watched this through 3 times, might even be 4 times in total now, from start to finish. It's called Psychopath Diary, and this is a comedy that's also a thriller. Our main character is a sort of nobody who everyone looks down on, and then one day he is planning to kill himself, but he stumbles across a serial killer at work. As he's running away, he's hit by a police car and gets amnesia. As he left the scene, he grabbed the serial killer's diary. So when he wakes up with no memories, he believes the diary is his and starts to think that he is a psychopathic serial killer. And he changes his behaviors accordingly. Meanwhile, of course, the real killer is trying to get his diary back. It's really great fun. It's a serious serial killer story on the one side, but a lot of comedy on the other side. And finally, Miss Day and Night. This is a young woman who one day suddenly wakes up as her older self, about sort of 30 years in the future, but at night she turns back into her younger self. And so she's trying to live her life and work jobs without getting caught out. Now historical. So first up, Hechi, which is a sort of Joseon era, trying to get the king on the throne, political intrigue, royal intrigue kind of story. Mr. Sunshine, this one is set in the sort of early 1900s. It's about the Korean independence movement against Japanese intervention in Korea. The Japanese have taken over Korea at that point, and there's also romance elements going on as well. Tree with Deep Roots. This is loosely based on the story of the creation of the Korean alphabet, Hangul, but there's also a sort of murder mystery, who's killing the scholars plotline going on in the background as well. In The King's Affection, we have twins that were born, and this is really ominous. So the girl was taken away and hidden, but when the boy dies and he's heir to the throne, she gets called back and has to impersonate him and live as her brother. And then obviously when romance comes along, there's various cases of mistaken identity, who's a man, who's a woman going on. And next up, Moon Embracing the Sun. And this is a sort of not historically accurate, but Joseon era-esque tale with royal intrigue, political intrigue, but also shamanism and romance and various things going on as well. So moving on to paranormal, where there is a very fine line between fantasy and paranormal. So for these ones, I've stuck more with ones that have sort of what I think of as paranormal creatures in. So first off, we have Black. This is Grim Reapers, essentially. And they end up, the main character ends up discovering, unraveling a truth about some murders that happened in the past that take over the rest of the story, including his romance with a girl who can foresee death. And next is Goblin. This one's a very famous one. It's also known as Guardian, the Great and Lonely God. And in this, we have a goblin who is waiting for his bride to pull out the mystical sword in his chest. And it also features Grim Reapers and some other characters as well. Scholar Who Walks the Night. This was one of the ones I watched really early on. It's a sort of Joseon era, so historical vampire story, basically. Tale of the Nine-Tailed. This is about a gumiho, a nine-tailed fox. So there's sort of a bit of supernatural, a bit of murder and things going on. And finally, Blood. And this is a modern day vampire story where our sort of main character is a vampire, but he also works as a surgeon. So moving on to a few boys' love. Now we start off here with Semantic Error. And in this one, we have a sort of computer science major and an artist, sort of opposites attract kind of storyline. The next one we have is To My Star, and this is about a down on his luck actor who ends up meeting up and having to stay with a chef. And again, it's a bit of an opposites attract sort of tale. And You Make Me Dance is about an aspiring young dancer and a mortgage collector. And Where Your Eyes Linger is a very classic Cher Eyre and his bodyguard tale. And finally, Colour Rush. This one's a little bit different in that one of our characters can only see the world in grayscale, until he meets the one he's destined to be with, when he can suddenly see the world in colour. So science fiction. First off, one of the very early ones I watched again when I first got into K-drama, and that I still think is awesome, is Are You Human? And this one is a robot who was created by his mother to replace a son. So as he grew up, she kept adapting the robot as he looked older and older. And it's whether he can fall in love, and is he human or is he just a machine? Familiar Wife is a bit of a sort of time travel kind of tale, in that the hero acquires the ability to change events in the past. And when he makes a different decision at the time he meets his wife, things start to unravel in his life. My Hollow Love doesn't need too much explanation. I think the title says it all. We're talking holograms in this one. My Love from the Star, again, we're talking visitors from outer space and romance with humans. And finally, Rugal, which is a sort of seeking revenge crime story, but with the main character who gets these sort of biotechnology enhancements. So now thinking about rom-coms, I've started with Business Proposal. In this one, we have a young woman who takes her friend's place at a blind date, only to discover that her date is her boss. And he makes a proposal that they get married because he's trying to get his grandfather off his back about finding a wife and settling down. And she's trying to keep from him the fact that she's his employee. Crash Landing on You. This is a woman who, during a sort of accident, skydiving accident, ends up floating into North Korea, where she meets a North Korean soldier who helps to smuggle her back across the border. But there's obviously a romance that blossoms between them. Crash Course in Romance I really enjoyed. This was a tale of a mum, a single mum, and she meets a tutor, a maths tutor at a sort of after-school academy. What's Wrong with Secretary Kim is about a sort of arrogant CEO who one day is in a panic because his very competent secretary suddenly decides to quit, and he's trying to work out why and how to get her to stay. And finally, Frankly Speaking, about a man who, after an accident, suddenly can no longer avoid telling the truth. And instead of being suave and working his way through politics and situations, he keeps just saying what's on his mind and getting into trouble. And he eventually finds a way out of this through working on a reality show with a content creator. So let's look at horror. I'm not a big fan of horror, but I do watch a few of the Korean horror shows because I find them a bit more engaging than some of the English language materials. So first up, Kingdom. So this is a historical zombie show. So if you like Joseon era, historical drama and zombies, this is one to watch. Strangers from Hell is a drama about a young man who moves into an apartment building where there's some very dubious characters around, let's just say. In Sweet Home, we have people turning into monsters and attacking each other. And our hero, actually, I won't tell you because I don't want to spoil it. Go and watch it yourself and you'll find out about our hero. All of Them Are Dead is another zombie show, this time with a high school setting. And finally, Gyeongsong Creature is set during the Japanese occupation, and they've been doing experiments on people and have created these creatures, these vicious creatures. And next up are sort of legal dramas and crime dramas. So first of all, I picked Extraordinary Attorney Woo, which is about a young woman with Asperger's who's a lawyer and has an amazing IQ to solve her cases. Next up, bad guys. In this series, a policeman assembles a team of bad characters from different backgrounds in different ways that they've ended up in jail. And he assembles them together because the best way to catch a villain is to use a villain, he decides. Next, Vincenzo. In this story, our main character was consigliere for the Italian mafia. And when he comes back to Korea, he ends up taking on a conglomerate that's causing trouble. In Taxi Driver, this is a kind of vigilante revenge series where the taxi driver ends up helping his clients with various problems that where bad guys have got away with it in the past through legal means. So he's the backup way to get the revenge for them. And finally, Cafe Minamdang, which is a tale of a former profiler who's now become a shaman. And essentially, he's a fraudster, taking money from people by pretending to be a shaman when using his profiler skills to make assumptions about them. But at the same time, he does end up helping to solve their various cases and the things that are going on in their lives. And the last category I'll cover is what I'm thinking of as straight drama. So it'd be just your sort of contemporary literature or literary fiction. And the first one I've picked for this is The Last Empress. Now, this is a show set in a fictional future Korea where it's still a monarchy. And it's kind of tales of royal intrigue and the like going on. Navalera is a drama about an older man, a sort of grandfather age man who suddenly decides he wants to study ballet. And the young up and coming ballet dancer who assists him. Move to Heaven is an interesting show about a young man with Asperger's and his uncle who do trauma cleanup of houses after murders and accidents and things. And so while they're doing that work, they uncover the stories of the people who lived there. The next one I picked is The Trunk. This is a story that I'm not going to say too much about because I don't want to spoiler it, but it's basically a trunk washes up and it leads to the uncovering of this company who offer services of sort of renting out wives and husbands. And finally, It's Okay Not to Be Okay, which is the story, a sort of drama and a romance between an antisocial children's book author and a young man who works at a psychiatric hospital. So those were my picks and my recommendations, depending on what type of fiction you enjoy reading. I hope you've enjoyed them, and I'll be back again soon with another vlog for you. Bye for now, everyone.